So what does this crazy number mean, this 253? Well, the 2 stands for feet, the 5 stands for inches, and the 3 stands for eighths of an inch. Now, what that's used for is in a table of offsets, which is what we're going to develop today on our tender. In addition, I'm going to take those table of offsets and I'm going to loft it into a full size. So all of that's coming up in this episode. But first, we've got to finish up the line plan. I've cleaned up the drawing a little bit here in making sure that all of my lines are nice and fair and checking the different profiles of the body plan against the half-breadth plan to make sure all of my water lines and everything all line up. The other thing that I did by some eagle-eyed viewers is that I had this line was incorrect, so I have corrected that. There are a couple of things I've added to the drawing. One is the stem layout, and the other is the skeg. The other thing that I added are some buttock lines, and you remember buttock lines run parallel to the center line. And they appear here in the body plan, so there's buttock 1, 2, and 3, and here is the center line. Now these are described then in the profile plan over here, and you can see I've already plotted buttock line 1 and 2. Now I did that by plotting the heights of each station and then drawing a line in. So let me show you how I determined those heights. So if we take buttock line 3 here and we measure, let's say, frame 6 right here, or station 6 I should say. 6 is over on this side. So we come down to where 6 meets buttock line 3, our dividers, and we come over here then at 6 and make a little tick mark. Now we'll do the same thing from buttock line 3 up to station 5, which is right there, and plot that one. And then we'll do station 3, or buttock line 3, and we'll go up to station 4 and make a tick mark. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue doing exactly that, and then we'll join those dots together. So now I've got all of those points plotted along here on the profile, and so the next thing to do is to take a little batten here, and we'll start to join those tick marks up. Use this little nose of this one to put it against there, and you can see then I can slowly bend this batten around. So this batten will only bend as far over from the stern to station 6. So I'm just going to draw that part in right now, just to station 6. And then get these ducks out of the way. And what we will do is then we're going to use a yacht curve in order to finish it up, because it's a pretty steep curvature, as you can see here. So put this yacht curve, line up tick marks, like so, and then we'll draw the remainder of that buttock line in. So we have it. We've got all 3 buttock lines now in the profile view. So now that we have our 3 main lines represented, being the station lines, the water lines, and the buttock lines, there's one more line that we can add. Now it is really completely up to the designer whether you put a diagonal line in or not. I'm going to add one Not because this boat particularly needs one, because it's a fairly small craft, but I'm going to put one in just to show how a diagonal goes in. Now, you can put a diagonal in here at any point that you want one where you need information. I'm going to simply put a 45-degree diagonal line in here, mainly because it hits right here at the bilge of the boat. So simply drop a line in like so, and then of course we need it going the other direction. So that. Now, I'm going to plot that line down here, and the way that we will measure that is from the center line here down to the station that we're looking for. So the first station here is S1. So if I go over here then at station S1, and I line up with the center line here and make a little tick mark. And then same thing for each one of the stations. So here would be station 10. And I'm going to go on and finish these tick marks, and then we'll line up the station marks with it. And now that I've got all of those points marked off, I can now take my batten here and measure that out and then draw it in. So now once we have our diagonal drawn in there, we can see that it fares out very nicely. So everything looks like it's in pretty good shape. So the next thing is to set up a table of offsets. So now that we've got all of our lines drawn into our line plan, we now need to measure the offsets. Now what an offset is a measurement along any one of those lines, either a water line or a buttock line. So those offsets are then recorded in a table, which is called a table of offsets. Now earlier I had mentioned about those odd numbers like the 2, 5, 3. Now why is it that they denote them that way instead of just simply writing the inches and fractions? Well, the story is that in the days of when a foreman would be shouting out the offsets and the worker would be then plotting them on the lofting floor, that it was much easier to understand by them just yelling out 3 numbers as opposed to a bunch of fractions. So it basically eliminated a lot of errors. Now, I'm going to do that in our table of offsets for Victoria simply because it is a traditional thing to do, and also if you're ever reading boat plans, most likely that's how they're going to be written. So let's get started with our table of offsets. So I've put together here a chart for our table of offsets. Now, one of the things that some of you eagle-eyed viewers may notice is that I changed where I had, it was LL1, I changed it to WL1. Now LL1 stands for long line, and that actually can refer to not only water lines, but buttock lines and diagonal lines and so forth. So I changed it to WL, which is water line, which is, I feel, a little more descriptive. So what we have here is our table of offsets, and you can see along the top here I have all of the station marks, and then here I've got the height above the baseline. So remember, this is the baseline right here. And then I've listed the shear, the buttock 3, buttock 2, buttock 1, the keel, and then the skeg. Then at the bottom here are the half breadths, and they are from the center line, which is this line here or over here in the half-breadth view. So what we need to do now is to measure with our scale, and we will go to the 1.5 equals 1 foot, which is the scale that I've drawn the line plan here. So to get started, what we're going to do now with our scale is to measure these heights where each one of them are. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with station 1 and then fill this in and then across the chart this way. And then, so I'm going to do basically all of the heights, and then I'm going to go through and do all of the half-breadths. So we have here station 1 at the shear. So if we get our scale right here, so we measure from the baseline up to the shear at station 1, which is right here. So we come up, and that gives us 2 feet, 1 inch and a half. So to write that, we of course will write 2 feet, 1 inch and a half, which is 4/8. So then we write a 4. So now we'll go to buttock line 3, which is here, and there isn't anything for station 1 at 3, 2, but there is one at buttock line 1. And so buttock line 1, we would come up to where it meets station 1. And so that is, looks like 1 foot, 9 and a half. So we over here and we write 1 foot, 9 and a half, again, is 4/8. Now, at the keel, we have the next measurement. And the next measurement at the keel, which would be right here for station 1, is 0 feet, 7 inches, and it looks like about 1/8. So we will then go here and write 0, 1, I'm sorry, 0.7 and 1/8. And there isn't anything at the skeg at line 1 here, so that also is blank. So I'm going to go through and do a couple of these, and then we'll come back and check on some of the other measurements. So I've filled in 2 and 3, so now we'll be on station 4, which is right here. So the first one we measure is the shear, and the shear to the baseline is 1 foot, 9 inches, and I'm going to call it 5/8. So that would be 1 foot, 9 inches, and 5/8. Looks like 0 feet, 3, and I'm going to call it an 1/8. So 0, 3, 1. So 0, 3, 1. So now I'll go ahead and finish off this side, and then we'll check back when we get over here on the other side. So that's how buttock line heights are determined. So I'm going to continue on with this, and then we'll check back in when I start recording the half-breadth offsets. So we're now measuring the half-breadths from the center line. And I already started. I've got station 1, 2, and 3 completed. So now we're working on station 4. So the first measurement is at the shear over to station 4. So the shear we're going to measure from the center line here to 4, which is right there. And it looks like it's going to be 1 foot, 9.25. So we log here now 1 foot, 9 inches and a quarter, of course, is 2/8. So the next line we want is waterline 2. Waterline 3 misses 4, so we won't have anything here. So at waterline 2, we come over until we meet station 4, which is right here. And that gives us 1 foot 9.5. So we got 1 foot 9 4/8. So now at waterline 1, we come down to where 4 meets waterline 1, and we have 1 foot 8 3/4. So we have 1 foot 8 6. All right, now I'm working on the diagonals. And I already did the diagonals here on the fore side of the boat. So now what I'm going to do is show how I measure the diagonals on the aft side. So we're looking at now frame number 7. So if we line up this diagonal with frame number 7 to the center line here, okay, so it is 1, 2, 3 and 1/4. So we have 2 feet, 3 inches, and 1/4, which is 2/8. So now the next one would be number 8. And we start, put it here on the 2 and come up. And now we have 2, 2 1/4. So 2 feet, 2 inches, and 1/4. So 2/8. So I hope that gives you a clear idea about how offsets are determined and how they're recorded into a table. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention is that each week I do a live boat building clinic with some people from basically all around the world. There's about 19 boat builders that join me once a week, and we discuss all types of aspects of boat building. And lofting and offset tables and construction are many of the topics that we cover each week. Now, if you're interested in learning more about that, stick around till the end and I'll tell you how you can get involved. So right now that we have our offset table and our line drawing finished, the next thing to do is to prepare a lofting floor so that we can loft the boat full size. I'm just marking off the stations according to the plans, the dimensions. Now, what some of you are probably wondering is, why am I working on the floor? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First off, if it was up on sawhorses, it's 4 feet long and 4 feet wide and 10 feet long. I'd have to walk all the way around it to get from one side of the shop to the other. With it on the floor, I can take a shortcut straight across of it, not being hampered by that big platform in here. The other thing is, because it is 4 feet wide, and if it was up on sawhorses, I'd be leaning over pretty far to get some of those points marked off. With it on the floor, I can scoot myself into the middle of the platform or the floor so that I can have it right in front of me as I'm working. Now, I know a lot of you don't like it from past comments when I work on the floor, but it actually is the way I prefer to do it. So in the future, if you are lofting a boat, You can certainly put it on a platform, you can hang it on the wall, you can do whatever you want. But this method really works the best for me. So I'm going to go ahead and mark off the rest of the stations, and then I'll start putting in some parallel lines for them. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm putting parallel lines in here for each station, and I've got a big drywall square here which I can set on the mark and kind of get a general idea where it's going to fall. And then to check that for absolute 90 degrees, I take a Dremel points and the same distance over, so this is a 10-inch distance. I make a mark and then come over 10 inches to the next station here and make a mark. And then where that meets, I know that the square is going to be perfectly square. So I'll line that up and then make sure that I'm crossing those two spots and then draw a line. And I'll move on down and get all of those stations laid out. So now that I've got all of my station lines on the lofting floor, the next thing is to establish the baseline. So what I've done is I've taken a very straight piece of cabinet grade plywood here and attached it right where the baseline would be. Now the next thing to do are to add those water lines. And we can tell by the plans that the water lines, the first water line is 8 inches. And then the next one is 5 inches. So 8 plus 5 is 13. And then another 5 inches. Water line 3 is 23 inches right here. Okay, so now that I've got those marked off, I'm going to take my straight edge and mark out those water lines. Well, you can see I've got all of my water lines now established on my lofting floor. And you can see basically now I have a grid, and that grid is exactly the same as the grid that is on the drawing. So now a lot of people want to make out that lofting is a very big and mysterious and complicated process. In reality, it really is not, especially now that you've seen where offsets come from, all of those measurements, and it's simply now translating those measurements onto the floor. And with this grid, we're able to do that right at the station marks and or the water lines. So what I'm going to establish first is the shear. So I know that at the stem we have 2'2". So I'll line this up against my baseline here and come up 2'2", which is 26 inches. Make a mark. And we come now to station 1. In station 1 so I have a copy of my lofting table, offset table right here. And so station 1 is 210. So we know that that is 2 foot 1 inch, which is 25 inches. So we come up here now and make a mark at 25. And then move over to station number 2, which is 1'11'4". We know that that is 1 foot 11 and a half. So 1 foot 11 and a half is, 1 foot 11 is 23 and then a half, so it's 23 and a half inches right there. Okay, so I'm going to just go through my numbers here on my offset table and establish all of those marks along all of the other stations. Okay, now that I've got the shear points established, I get a batten out and draw that line. Once I got the batten all weighted down, then checked to make sure that it was a nice fair curve. A couple little minor adjustments, and I think we're ready to go. So now I've got all of the batten all set up, and it looks really good. So now it's just a matter of going by and drawing a line. So if you don't have weights, which makes it very easy to adjust things, you can also use nails. You can see I've used this batten for other things, and there's a little nail in here. So you could also nail it down. The beauty of the weights is that if there needs to be a little adjustment, it's very easy to make. Well, now that I've got the shear all established, I can now do the very same thing for the keel. Well, I've got all of the profile lines all drawn in now. I also added the stern and the skeg, and I also added the stem. And we'll talk more about the stem in future videos when we get more to the construction drawing of the boat. So right now, the next thing I need to do is to put in the body plan. And I'm going to let station 6 double as the center line. So after now that I've established that as a center line, I then need to add the buttock lines, both port and starboard, and they are 6 inches apart. Actually, I misspoke. Both sides of the body plan represent the port side. So now that I've got my buttock lines established in the center line, we now can start laying out the profiles. So I'm going to start with station 6. So the first measurement we need is at buttock 3, we are at 5.055, and so that is 5 inches and 5/8, which is right here. And then at buttock 2, we have 0.35, so that is 3 5/8. It's right here. And then finally on buttock 1, we have 0.27, which is 2 7/8. So now what we need to do is to establish the shear at station 6. So to do that, the first thing we can do is find the height, which is 184, which translates to 20.5 inches. So I'm kind of just going to go out here where I kind of know that it's probably going to be. So I'm going to make a mark there, that direction. And then the half breadth at the shear for station 6 is 203. So 203 is 2 foot and 3/8. So if we go over here at the shear, 2 foot and 3/8 is right there. All right, so now you can kind of see we have a little bit of a curve here that starts to establish that. So you can see there's a lot of information out here that we don't have. So we're going to start now by plotting our half breadth, and we're going to start here at waterline 2. So waterline 2, half breadth is 203, which is exactly the same distance as the shear. It's 203, it's right there. And waterline 1 is 111.7. So that's 1 foot 11 7/8. 1 foot 11 7/8 is right there. And then finally at the loaded water line, we have 192. So that is 1 foot 9 inches. 1 foot 9 inches, so that's 21 and 2, I think I said. 2, yeah, so 2 is 1/4 right here. All right, so now we can see that, and we know that at station 6, which is the same here, that this is where it's going to meet at the keel. So now what we need to do is just take a batten and connect these points. So the goal here is to adjust the batten so that we hit as close as we can to our tick marks, or right on them would be ideal. But basically what we want to do is have a really nice fair curve. So in some circumstances, I can see like here at this buttock line mark, it's about 1/4 of an inch off. So that's not unusual considering that the size of the scale that we are working off of. So this is the most important part, is to make sure that we have a nice fair curve. And it's ideal that it's absolutely perfect at the keel and absolutely perfect at the shear. So now that I've got that pretty well fared out nicely, all I need to do is mark it out. So now we have the profile for our station 6. Now the next, so I use the very same process, moving from 5 on down to station 1. After finishing the fore side of the body plan, I then started working on the aft side of the body plan, starting with the stern and then working from stations 10, 9, 8, and finally 7. Now, one of the things that happens when you're lofting, the dimensions off of your table of offsets may say one thing, and once you put the batten on there, then it seems to be way off. For example, this mark here, which is at waterline 1, it looks like it's about 3/8 of an inch or so off of where the batten line is. If I had pushed that over and tried to make all of the points touch, I would have gotten a really strange wobble in there. So it's important that you hit as many of the points as possible, certainly at the beginning, at the center line, and at the shear in this case. But you want to have a nice, fair curve in there. Now, one of the things I discovered also is that I'm dyslexic, so I reversed some numbers in my table of offsets. So, for example, I might have meant to write 157, but in reality what I did write was 175. So of course that's a couple of inches off, and once I laid it out, I clearly saw that that was not correct. So I did go through and kind of corrected the table of offsets to really fit what the layout is here on the lofting floor. So that's basically it. That's how you get a table of offsets from a line drawing, and how you loft a full-size boat from a table of offsets. So I had mentioned earlier about the live boat building clinic that I hold online once a week. If that's something you think you'd be interested in, there's a link below where you can schedule a 30-minute call with me, and we'll see if we're a good fit. Now, while working on the plans for Victoria, it occurred to me that many of you may enjoy owning a set of plans for the boat. And if that's the case, then leave me a comment below indicating that that's something that you might be interested in. Now, one of the things that some of you know is that I am not getting paid to build Victoria. It is my contribution to Steve's project of Arabella. Now, what he did do is he supported me in giving me the materials that he had salvaged from Victoria to build the new tender. Now, if you'd like to get involved in helping to support the project of building the tender, there are several things you can do. Some of them don't cost anything. One, you can subscribe to the channel. You could leave a positive comment below, and you can certainly, if you can give me a thumbs up. Now, the other thing you can do is you can purchase some merchandise, which is listed below. You can get a t-shirt like this, or a coffee mug, and a little bit of that proceeds will help fund the project as well. So ultimately, the best thing you can do is to become a patron of the art of boat building. There are many tiers to choose from, and any one of them that you choose will be much appreciated. So I'd like to invite you to become a member of the Art of Boat Building Patreon community. So the next thing that's up for Victoria is we're going to start working on the strong back and setting up the molds. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you the next time on the Art of Boat Building.